today, and I also very much thankful for your attendance because this is I know this is an election day, and everyone's talking about it in Japan. Um, Somehow it is I'm a political scientist, and it seems that I am being called upon for many meetings and events to discuss about what will be the future of Japan-US relationship after this election. And I think there are very much concerns among the Japanese population that, whatever happens in the United States might definitely have uh, influence on the Japanese political system and the situation. So what I'm going to do is just give you the sort of a brief outlook of how Japanese are talking about the world after the US presidential election, and try to give you the sort of a various aspects of the current ongoing election. But I think I understand that this is a group of teachers, so please I would try to give the time as much as possible for the Q&A so that you can ask anything that is beyond this presentation. So let me just start talking about this geopolitical risk of Moshitora and Moshihari. Moshitora is the if Trump wins, and Moshihari is if Harris wins. There are, in Japanese, these four syllables, Moshi Tora or Moshi Hari is the kind of when you try to say something catchy, then it is, we tend to use these four-syllable wording, and Moshi Tora and Moshi Hari were quite popular in Japan. Even the newspaper used those words, and I think some reporters in Japan, the U.S. Newspaper reporters in Japan, such as the Washington Post, has used this Moshitora languages. So what we are seeing from Japan that if there are a lot of risks that we are facing when Mr. Trump has elected or Miss Harris is elected. And a couple points were highlighted as points that we are concerning the most. The first one is the war in Ukraine. Since 2022, the February 2022, the Russian invasion in Ukraine has concerned the Japanese policymakers and also the public. Mr. Kishida, who was then the prime minister, said today's Ukraine is tomorrow's East Asia. And this is the idea that, the way in which he tried to frame the Russian invasion in Ukraine is somewhat similar to the situation between the United States, China, and Taiwan. So there are one of the most significant geopolitical risks for Japan is the Taiwan contingency. And if China invade Taiwan, then, Japan has to take some actions. But because of the constitutional constraints, Japanese military forces, self-defense force, were not able to rescue the Taiwan. So we definitely need the support from United States. And if United States do not intervene in Taiwan, then that will be the sort of a nightmare scenario for Japan. So war in Ukraine is somewhat a mental exercise of what's going to happen in Taiwan. And so we are pretty much our concern about the U.S. position in Ukraine after the election is is being in the first and sharply focused on this. If Mr. Trump is elected, he keeps saying that he's going to end the war, and probably he doesn't make any plans clearly, but it seems that he might ask Ukrainians to concede against the Russia. So that means giving up the territory and to establish a ceasefire by by accepting the occupation of the occupation of the four uh, oblasts of Ukraine. And that is quite a different position than the other NATO countries, particularly the European countries, especially Poland and Germany and some other, Baltic states, consider that if Ukraine concede and if there is a ceasefire, but there will be the Putin's ambition will not stop there. So he would soon after the establishment of ceasefire, he will be restart the war again, and then eventually, it will make Ukraine in a much difficult position. So the Mr. Trump's idea may not be the best solution for the Ukraine and for the European allies. If Miss Harris win the election, then we are assuming that Miss Harris will continue support of Ukraine, but still imposing limits of the use of U.S. arms. Basically, I think this is a continuation of the Biden administration's policy, and I think it will be very difficult for Ukrainians to have a sort of a bargaining chip with Russia if it is not being able to attack the Russian territory. So I think whoever wins the next election, this election, I think the war in Ukraine won't stop, or there may be even if it stops, it will be temporary, and that is also being giving us thinking of the Taiwan contingency, because if China invades Taiwan and Taiwan try to resist, and because of the different geographical location, I mean, the Ukraine and the Russia are connected on the land, whereas um, uh, the I think do you see my slides? I'll just try. No. So I think you see my slides. So basically, what happened in Ukraine is going to have certain implications in the situation in Taiwan, and Japan will be standing in a sort of a similar position like Poland or Baltic states. So we are now mentally preparing for what happened in Ukraine will be applied to the Taiwan, and neither of the candidates are giving us a comfort in terms of the support of the Taiwan. The next issue is the situation in the Middle East. Of course, this has been a major issue, and in the United States as well. There are, certain group of people who wants to support the Israel, and but there are a certain group of people supporting the Palestinians, or let's say against the sort of a humanitarian from the humanitarian ground about the behavior of Israel. I think Mr. Trump and Ms. Harris are both supporting Israel in general term. Ms. Harris is make a reservation that all the counterstrike against the Hamas and Islamic forces should be more inhumane, more humane manner, but and try to avoid civilian casualties. But Mr. Trump does not mention about the civilian casualties, and mainly he's a very strong supporter uh, uh, for for Israel. Probably Mr. Netanyahu is very much happier to if Mr. Trump is elected. The Japanese position on the Middle East is very much in the middle of everything. We are taking more neutral stances, although Japan, as a member of the G7, is aligned with Western countries, including the United States, but a lot of concerns about a spread of this warfare to the Arabic states, which may involve the supply of the oil, and probably it would have a significant issue for the oil prices in Japan. I think Middle East is very crucial and strategically important for Japan, so that we are not trying to currently, the Arab states are maintaining a very calm position, but we don't want to intervene in this situation. So, and we are not capable of doing anything unless this current warfare is going on. So we are calling for the ceasefire, but it's up to the Israel, and the all focus is not only Israel but also on the Persian Gulf. The most concerning part of the result of this election is the policy towards China, especially Mr. Trump is claiming that he's going to put 60% tariff against China, which may not seem realistic, but there is a great possibility that Mr. Trump is applying some kind of a tariff, uh, raising tariff against Chinese products or the imports from China. And probably, because of the globalized supply chain, Chinese product does not come from China, but it may come from other countries, including Mexico. So probably if Mr. Trump is elected, that he might put a very higher tariff to the Chinese product. So that will that would of course escalate the tension between the United States and China, and but I don't think that that will immediately lead to the military confrontation between the United States and China. But I think the Japan in the middle of the United States and China, and Japan as the number one investor in the United States, but also the China as the number one trading partner to Japan, we are in the middle of this conflict or contest between the United States and China. And I think that would make, our businesses are very much concerned of what kind of policies that Mr. Trump is going to take, and what will be the realistic numbers of the tariffs that he is going to impose. Ms. Harris is probably, she has not used a very clear language about her policy on China, but it seems that she's going to take the certain policy trends of the Biden administration, and more tighter restriction on the Chinese to export to China or investment in China. So she will also use the other means to protect the U.S. Industry. And also, I think, unlike Mr. Trump, Ms. Harris will have another opportunity for being re-elected. So I think, she is going to take relatively protectionist measures, and especially uh, against Chinese products. The environmental policy is going to be the most controversial and probably the most different policies between Mr. Trump and Ms. Harris. Mr. Trump is, well, in his first administration, he left the Paris Accord, and he is trying to, destroy or obstruct the international negotiation. While he was in the White House, he did not encourage the G7 or any other multinational forum to promote the idea of the decarbonization. So if Mr. Trump is elected, I think the environmental policy will step back a lot. And although there are states and municipalities which committed to decarbonization, but I think most states, especially those states which has a lot of activities like fracking, will accept or will encourage Mr. Trump to be more deregulate on the environmental issues. Ms. Harris, meanwhile, is trying to maintain the current policy, but from Japanese point of view, Ms. Harris has not been shown her diplomatic skill. We don't know for sure that she'll be able to shape the international norm or what kind of policy or values that she's going to deliver at the international level. So we'll be happy to work with Ms. Harris in the environmental front to promote a new idea through diplomacy. The trade policy is another question mark because the first Trump administration, the trade policy was very devastating, largely because of this, his refusal to appoint the appellate body of the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, which means that the WTO is not functioning as the mediator of the trade dispute. The WTO rules are no longer being enforced to the member states. So the principle of free trade is gradually eroding since the first term of the Trump administration. But at the same time, Mr. Biden was also not being very enthusiastic of bringing back the free trade and reappoint the members of appellate body. So on the trade policy front, Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden has not been so different. Mr. Biden has not rewinded the tariff policy against China, or Mr. Trump, Mr. Biden has not reducing the tariff level on the steel and aluminum. Talking about the steel, there is a very big concern on the Japanese side that Mr. Biden is preventing the acquisition of the U.S. steel by Nippon Steel. This is primarily because of this. This is an election year, and U.S. Steel is based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and one of the key battleground state. and Union was refused to. Well, Union was against the Nippon Steel's acquisition of U.S. Steel. So I think it is mostly motivated by the electoral reasons. But Mr. Biden has used the framework called the CFIUS, the Committee on the Foreign Investment in the United States. The CFIUS is supposed to prevent the foreign acquisition with the malign intent. Sometimes there are Chinese investors buying stocks or trying to buy a company which has a very sensitive technology. So CFIUS was to prevent these malign investment to steal the sensitive technology from the United States. The Japanese investment in U.S. Steel is not with a malign intent and is not a security threat, but Mr. Biden is using a CFIUS framework, which is designed to be protection from it's for the security reasons. So it is a very disappointing case about, when we think about the U.S. Biden administration's posture against these free trade and the free investment. So furthermore, in terms of trade policy, we are concerning about Mr. Trump's policy towards the USMCA, or formerly known as NAFTA. This USMCA was one of the major framework for Japanese investors to invest in Mexico, and there are exports from Mexico to the United States, and I think that has been the sort of a business model for the many Japanese manufacturers. So if the USMCA will be terminated or reformed in a very significant way, then it would have a very significant impact on the Japanese businesses. The other geopolitical risks, which may or may not have any relevance to the elections, Russia is expanding in like an imperial posture. So are we going to go back to the 19th century? If Russia is expanding its territory by force, who would be the followers of the Russian behavior? Is China going to behave like Russia as an imperialism, and China try to expand its territory? To a certain extent, it does in the South China Sea, but is it going to be limited within the South China Sea, or is it going to go beyond that so-called the 9-dash line? That will be the very much concern for Japan, and and also it's a security and strategic challenge to the United States. But we are not sure. The other issue is the proximity of Russia and North Korea. The Russia and North Korea is approaching very quickly. North Korea not only sending arms and ammunition, but also sending troops to the front line in the war in Ukraine. This is very much concerning for the South Korean. I was in Seoul yesterday, and there were a lot of discussion about the South Korea to develop its own nuclear weapon in order to deter the North Korean nuclear capabilities. So that's another concern for Japan, because we don't want to have any more nuclear countries around us. we have Russia, North Korea, China is in our neighborhood. And if we have South Korea altogether, that will be a very unstable and dangerous zone in the world. There are conflicts between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea. Again, because of the Chinese expansion, is now infringing with Filipino jurisdiction, and this is again another concern because South China Sea is the major shipping route. So we need to how we need to we concern about the sea lane protection, and Japan is trying to build up the Coast Guard capabilities of the Philippines, but China has much more higher and very capable Coast Guard forces. So this, and we don't know yet for whether how to control the escalation between China and the Philippines. So that's been another issue, and of course the United States has a vital interest in this region as well. Sino-Indian conflict, and this is changing rapidly in the recent days. The China and India is now settled down the the border dispute. The China and India are now encouraging and enhancing the economic relationship. So the Chinese now more investing more to India. This is very much concern for Japan and the United States and Australia because India is a part of Quad, the quadruple cooperation among the four countries. And this is meant to be the enhancing the maritime security cooperation among the four countries against Chinese expansion. But since India is approaching to China, then the whole dynamics, the power balance is going to change. So that is another concern for us and probably has certain impact after the election in the United States. China also expands to the South Pacific Islands and probably, possibly it may reach to close to Australia. So this is again another area where United States has interest, and this would be another subject to be dealt with by the new administration. There is a supply chain risks in Africa. There are lots of civil, the military coup in the Sahel regions, namely the Burkina Faso, Niger, and the Mali. And also there are ongoing civil war in Somalia, Sudan, and Democratic Republic of Congo. So these are all important countries for the supply of the critical mineral. The critical mineral has been the major issue for the economic security and the supply chain resilience for EV batteries or many other things for the very sophisticated products. And these conflicts in Africa may have certain impact on the supply chain. And so I think this is another subject to be discussed for the new American administration. Mexico, I mentioned that, so I'll just pass. There are certain movement in the Global South, the countries of Global South, or formerly known as a third country or third world or the developing state. These states are now increasingly becoming more explicit about their anti-Western sentiments. So I think these are making the G20 framework harder. And probably, you know, Mr. Biden were not really committed to the G20, and I think Ms. Harris will follow that suit. Probably Mr. Trump will have no appetite for engaging in the G20. So probably this anti-Western sentiment may not be carried out or transmitted to the U.S. Leadership. And I think this gap between the sentiments or the understanding of the world will have a certain impact on the future conduct of the international affairs. And there is a circumvention of the Russian sanctions, but Russian sanctions is still limited in effects, and very much of there are lots of loopholes of the Russian sanctions. So if Mr. Trump or Ms. Harris is not taking a serious stance for the prevention of the circumvention of the Russian sanctions, we are not sure that what will be the best way forward to put pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. So Japan-US relationship will be very much complicated in case of either candidates won. There are certain things is that both Mr. Trump and Ms. Harris concerning about China, and I think that is this part we would not have any issues with regard to identifying who are the other side of the game. But in terms of the intervention in Taiwan contingency, neither Mr. Trump nor Ms. Harris has made a clear vision. Although Mr. Biden was made 4 times a clear message that he is going to help Taiwan, although the White House immediately after that tried to deny his commitment and to stay down to its strategy of ambiguity, which means that the United States will not take a clear position whether to intervene in the Taiwan contingency. Actually, I don't think neither Mr. Trump nor Ms. Harris is taking this idea of the strategy of strategic ambiguity seriously. So it is very hard to tell what will be their position. And in that context, Japan has issued the new national security strategy in December 2022, and meanwhile, together with the national security strategy, Japan has issued a plan for defense buildup, and this is to strengthen the autonomous capabilities. But as you know, Japan has constitutional constraints to build up a full-fledged army, so it is still called self-defense forces, and it will not have the capabilities or the constitution prevents Japanese self-defense force to intervene in the Taiwan contingency. Basically, we do trust on the U.S. commitment, but the confidence is getting lower, and probably Mr. Trump will provide more opportunity that we would be concerning more about the lack of intervention by the United States. Japan is also very much in confusion. We had a general election in the 10 days ago, and there was no clear majority. The ruling coalition between the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, and the Komeito has lost the majority. So currently, it's the Han Parliament situation, and the Japanese minority ruling party will seek the partial coalition or the case-by-case coalition with the National Democratic Party, NDP, or Japan Innovation Party, which is called Ishin. So these partial or potential collaborator of the ruling coalition may remain to be pragmatic so that they will not have a very strong demand for the ruling coalition, LDP and Komeito, to change the national defense strategy. But I think given the strong demand by the NDP that to reduce taxations or enhance the tax credits, which eventually means that there will be a lack of uh, revenues for the government. So it may need to cut the expenditures or spending plan on the defense buildup. Japan continue the Abe Ishiba commitments, which is to enhance the Japan's military capabilities so that we'll be able to have more autonomous capabilities by increasing the defense spending, counter-strike capabilities, or enhancing the economic security. So there are a lot of evolution in the security front in the last decade, but I think this current Ishiba administration may not be able to continue because of its lack of majority. So probably the ruling coalition, Mr. Ishiba, is going to be in the very weak position, and probably it would make it difficult for coordinating the security plans with United States. However, the United States and Japan alliance has enhanced at the global stage, and Japan has been NATO IP4, and Japan was not engaged in the Middle East, but I think there are on the European front and the Ukrainian front, Japan and US work together, and I think that that has certain impact on the uh, uh, on the international stage. Finally, the economic front, I think it is rather doubtful for any U.S. policies moving forward in favor of the free trade. I think Mr. Trump is going to increase tariff. So probably from Japanese point of view, whether we are going to take this exemption for the like-minded countries or allied forces, and but also the United States, even the Biden administration, and probably Ms. Harris will continue doing so, is to invest in the industrial policy. And for many years, United States criticized Japan as the country of industrial policy, which distorts the market activities. But today, because of the security requirements and more concerns about the domestic economic situation, the United States is taking a very significant level of industrial policy and focusing on onshoring, which means to bring back the factories in the United States and create jobs and maintaining the supply chain. So from the economic security perspective, onshoring is not always necessary. It is better to have the friendshoring, which means to have the manufacturing manufacturing posts in friendlier countries and not in the hostile countries like Russia or China. But there is a much more concern or focus on the industrial policy focusing on the on onshoring. So that will be the sort of a zero-sum game between the allied states, which there is a competition of the subsidies between the United States and the other allies. Again, the acquisition of U.S. Steel by Nippon Steel, as I mentioned, there's use or abuse of the CFIUS, and this is undermining the trust on the instruments of the economic security in the United States. I don't think it is a protectionist move, but it has a lot of political implications. But I think the bigger issue is that it opens up the Pandora's box, which means that politics can manipulate and abuse the policy tools of the economic security. So this is a very slippery slope, and policy tools of economic security can be used for protectionist measures, while there is a legitimate reason for using those policy tools to prevent the hostile countries to take over the take away the sensitive technology. So I think this will be the very much of the problem. Resilience of supply chain. The United States and Japan is trying to make the industrial cooperation. One of the most successful cooperation is the cooperation between the IBM and the Rapidus, the newly established semiconductor company in Japan. But also we need to approach to Global South because we need to have an access to the critical minerals in the Global South. Finally, the technological cooperation, again, the Rapidus and IBM alliance is the very important footsteps for establishing the tech alliance, especially the sensitive and the security-related technologies such as semiconductor and AI, for establishing the common goals for maintaining a technological superiority against China. And this was the initially started by the United States in 2022 for preventing the access of Chinese companies and engineers for the high performing semiconductor. And this export control is also implied in Japan to prevent the export of the semiconductor manufacturing machines, equipments, the material, and well, actually, its machines, equipments were restricted to export to China in accordance to or in association with the U.S. Export control. So this is kind of a bilateral, and this was a trilateral cooperation between the United States, Japan, and the Netherlands. And I think this is very much of the case that we would work together in order to maintain our technological superiority. So I think that's about it. And I think we still have about 15 minutes to go. So I'll be happy to take any questions from you.